Okay, we're being live streamed. So, okay. So welcome to everybody. And I think I've heard from most of you about some of the verbiage in the draft that I sent out. So one of the things we wanted to do is to just go page by page where people have issues and try to come to some conclusion. And we hope that by the end of the meeting, we'll be able to actually vote on the recommendations. It's, I haven't done the survey summary yet because we haven't really said what we're going to approve and not approve. So I'm just going to go, as they say in the business, ad seriatim, and I'll start with the first page. Is there any discussion on any of the changes in the first page?
Well, what's the answer to the question you had?
Well, I just got this today. I did not put anything in because I thought there's probably something I don't know about this. And so I did see what Lori had written. And I wondered, the question that I had, are you talking about the definition of the competency restoration?
No. If we're on page 1 of the draft, you put in a question that said attachment 1, is the attachment going to be different from the appendices or should they be renamed?
That's just my way of doing it. The attachment's going to be the listing of our meetings that we have generated and who were the speakers. That's all I.
Yeah, Linda, it's John. That was my question. I'm sorry. What I was trying to get at is you had attachment 1, but then the next thing is appendix A. So I just didn't understand. Are we going to do attachments, appendices? We just need to clean that up. So make sure.
Oh, okay.
Well,
that's what I meant.
Yeah. Well, you know me, nurses are into appendix.
So are surgeons.
Okay. No, I wasn't really sure of the vernacular, so I started out with attachment and went on to, but that will be a listing of who the meetings that we had and who were our speakers. That's what it's intended to be.
Beverly, what's your, what do you see in most reports?
What do I see in the report?
Do you usually see people using attachments or appendices?
You can say attachment A or appendices A, B, or 1, depending on how you want to do it.
Okay. You don't see people preferring one over the other.
Mostly we use appendices.
Okay, then let's.
Okay.
I think appendix is better actually because attachment is kind of another thing you have to add as opposed to at the end you're going to list. Yeah. Appendix 1 is going to be all the people we've seen, right? Appendix 2 is now going to be the testimony, folks we have testimony from, or et cetera, right?
Okay.
So be it. I'm going to go on to page 2. Any changes there?
I would just note that if we're gonna, like I said in the email, we're gonna define competency restoration, I would do it in a section labeled competency restoration rather than here where we just reference competency restoration patients.
Oh no, I'm only on page 2.
That's what he's talking about.
Like you had bolded the term competency restoration patients on that page. I didn't know if that's where you were thinking about defining it, but I think it'd be better in the section labeled competency restoration in a footnote to define that.
That's fine with me. My only concern that was in what you sent around, Lori, is I'm never crazy about paraphrasing statutes. I think it makes, if you're going to use the statute to do the definition, then just use the statute rather than paraphrasing it.
The only reason I did that was because it's really long, like to encompass those three parts. It may be like a very lengthy part of the statute. So I thought paraphrasing it and then referring to the full statute if people want to read the whole thing.
We could put that in an appendice.
Yeah.
Just
Or-
do a footnote to the statutory site and then put the whole statute in the
I
appendice.
think that's, so we'd add that to the appendix.
Do you mean, Nancy, like include what I wrote in a footnote, but then also put the whole thing in the appendix?
No, just
Or-
include a statutory site in the
Just-
footnote and
Okay.
then put the entire statute in the appendix, in the appendix.
Good with that.
I had a question on that footnote. I don't know if you guys saw my question there, because it would strengthen our argument about the staffing shortages if the long-term treatment was closed because of staffing shortages. I assume that was the case. Is that true?
Yes.
Yes.
That's right, Lori, right?
That's my understanding, is that was.
Yeah. It's not like there weren't enough patients or to put it there.
No.
Yeah, so then we should add, if we could add that, I think it would be helpful.
I mean, there is also a low census right now, but that's also part of it, is there's staffing shortage.
And there was no denial of the fact that there were staffing shortages and testimony in court. Nobody denies that. Everybody admits it. So it's accurate to say that.
Okay, page 3.
Well, hey, I don't mean to butt in, but on page 2, I had one other thought.
Okay.
Just adding, we're referring to the building and the narrow call, the one hallway. It says staff to move from one part of the building to another is limited to a single hallway.
Yes.
Right. That's accurate, but I don't think it illustrates the problem well enough to people who have no idea, have never been in that building. And I thought maybe using the word circumnavigate or something, because isn't that the case? You kind of have to get from one point to another, you have to go around the circle, kind of, right? You know what I'm saying?
That's a good word. I like that.
Yeah, because I think if you think about that, you start to realize why that's a problem, like it's a one-way street almost,
Yeah, that's really good.
So
You mean like, I mean, obviously staff can cross the courtyard if necessary in a code,
oh, of
to get to
course,
the-
but
but
I
in
think
general, like, patient,
Yeah,
and everybody kind of go on
it's
one way.
it's one continuous loop around the
Yeah.
building inside
Yeah.
in that corridor, and I think that more effectively almost like dramatizes the dilemma, right? And
That's a good point.
because like if you got a normal building, there's just the third floor has a hallway and the fourth floor has a hallway, and everybody understands that. This is a little different, so
Yeah, it's like ring E of the Pentagon.
yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Right.
So anyway, I
I know
just
about
thought
that.
about that.
Any more on page 2?
No, that was just my one thought.
Okay, great. Page 3.
I had one point here in the second bullet. We had talked about this last week. We changed it to, we're talking about the standards of care and whatnot, and we changed to standards of care and treatment of people. And I thought about that afterward, and so I changed it back to patients. I wanted to see what people thought about that, because like when we're talking about standards of care, we're talking about for our professions, psychiatry, psychology, social work, whatnot. And that's in the treatment of patients. And it's actually like a higher standard than the standard of just being nice to people. You know what I mean? So like, yes, we're all people, but when we're talking about standards of care and professionalism and what is required and what we're responsible for, it's actually a higher standard than it is for the general public. So I thought it was important to keep that word patients.
Does anybody have a problem with that?
Signify that.
No, saying that, we'll move on to the paragraph about the need to strengthen community-based service and support.
I have some problems with the second sentence. I think we all want a hospital environment that affords a more seamless transition to community living. We disagree on how that is to be done, but I think we all would like a more humane environment that makes it easier for people to move into the community. And that will happen when a lot of our recommendations are enacted. So I'd like to just, I mean, everybody thinks that there should be a more seamless transition. And then can we say that the task force agrees that it should be a more better these are poor words. I'm just sort of, as
Would it suffice, Nancy, to just say like that the task force, discussed the need to strengthen community services and agreed that, on the importance of creating a hospital environment that affords a more seamless transition. Some members thought this may involve the
Yes.
creation of blah, 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 and then others thought that would cover it.
that's good. That
Yeah,
does it.
okay.
But the last sentence, I think it is, ultimately the task force members were in unanimous agreement that when determining where monies are to be allocated, preference should be given to community service over institutional enhancements.
I think that's okay, Linda, because the things that we're talking about, like, well, obviously a new facility would be money for the institution. And all of the other stuff that we talk about, the providing education and other kinds of supports, that yes, there have to be upgrades in what's happening in the institution. But maybe and that should be in turn that determining where monies, that's a typo there. But unanimous agreement that when determining where monies are to be allocated, preference should be given to community services. What about institutional enhancements should be made with the goal of creating this new hospital environment that affords a more seamless transition to community living? So, but obviously written more artfully.
I'd leave that because, we're talking about the construction facility in the separate section. Here, we're only talking about the community-based services, right? So I think the paragraph's pretty strong about, it's pretty clear that we think really strongly, right, that they should invest in community-based services. I'm not sure we need to do much wordsmithing.
I think the paragraph, I think we landed on that final statement that we said, we all kind of agree that that's where, given the choice, that's where the money should go. So I think this kind of captures the places where we agreed, there should be a seamless transition to the community. Then some people thought that might involve modifying the current hospital. Some people thought that would be money better spent on, those things can be provided in the community, but then ultimately we agreed, if given the choice, give to the community. So I think that kind of ties it all together pretty nicely, where we diverged and where we landed.
Right. And I think that's because the goal is to not have people sitting there for 18 months waiting to be discharged.
Yeah.
Right. Agreed.
Okay.
Agreed.
Cool.
So just to be clear on the the opening sentence of this paragraph should be, as is stated here, that the need to strengthen community-based services and supports. Members highlighted the importance of creating a hospital environment that affords a more seamless transition to community living.
It's just taking out the sum. That's really all you have to do.
Okay. Okay.
Point.
Anything else? We're good with this?
I guess I'm wondering, and let me see if I can find it. I believe in Norway, they've actually created psychiatric wards that are apartments within the psychiatric ward. So it might be good to, if I can find the article on it, to include that in the appendix as to, you know, hey, here's something that's already being done.
Good, good.
Hey, Lori, is it not the case that, what's the name of the patient who was the victim in that assault where the people got convicted of a crime? I forget his last name. What is this?
Mr.
Shahadi?
Shahadi?
Yeah. Is it not the case that there are some patients in the equivalent of an apartment at the moment there? Like multiple rooms?
So I can speak generally about
Yeah,
things.
I'm not asking you
and-
generally.
Yeah,
I-
there is what would probably be considered one apartment style where single patient, handful of rooms in the hospital environment. That's not including like the cottage settings that we've talked about before, but
Right.
the hospital itself, the Whiting Dutcher buildings, there's, you know, one area that would be construed as several rooms allotted to one patient.
Right, and I'm only raising that because it's not like it's completely impossible. I mean, your point, Paul, is a valid one, right? And I'm only raising this because it's not like it's never existed. It does exist. There's reasons for it, I think, in specific cases, but it's kind of like, you know, in an ideal world, maybe there'd be more of those. And I think that's what you're saying.
Right, exactly. You shouldn't have to sue the state for $30 million to get one.
I gather that this option predated that lawsuit, but
No, actually, it was around the lawsuit.
okay, all right. Well, in any event, it's
if
not-
my information is correct.
Right, it's not unthinkable or
Right.
unprecedented, is all I'm saying. You know,
We're not talking about Russell Hall, are we, Lori?
There's no
Okay.
patient.
Okay. Just
No,
that's
this
what
is
I-
in Whiting.
Right, that's what I thought, but there have been patients who have been incarcerated in Russell Hall, and I want to make sure we're not talking about that.
I mean, obviously there wouldn't be, you know, you couldn't make every single probably patient room or area, you know, like as a separate apartment or something, but certainly as a graduated, you know, the folks that are closer to going into the community should have the ability to have that kind of.
well, if you built a new facility, you could theoretically,
You could do that.
yeah.
Correct. Yeah.
Okay, we're up to page 4, right?
Yep.
A little clarification here about the sentence that says, this may involve the creation of modified units or residence settings that afford opportunity for teaching individual independent living skills in a safe and secure environment. Are we still good with that?
Yeah.
The apartment style, leaving that in there, that's what we were just discussing, right? There is that option now, to some extent.
Right.
Okay. And the rest of the paragraph, others in the task force, the services can and should be provided in the community itself, and patient stay in the institution should not be prolonged when it is possible to provide such services in the community.
That stays in.
Say again?
Yeah, I
That
think
stays
everybody
in.
was
Yeah, we're
good
on
with the
page,
rest of that
we're
paragraph.
ready for the next page.
We're on page 4.
We're good with 3.
Okay.
No, but on this, it's crossed out.
Oh,
No, it's
hold on.
not.
What's
Well,
crossed out?
you could, if you look at
the enhancements over institutional enhancements, there was a part that we didn't want to see an increase in institutional services that would prolong someone's stay in an institution when the services can be provided out in the community. That's crossed out on this right now.
Not the copy
only
that
have-
I have. It says that these services should be provided in the community itself, and that a patient's stay in the institution should not be prolonged when it is possible to provide such services in the community.
Right.
Okay, I may be working off an earlier version.
I know,
Yeah.
my printer botched it all up there. It was all, okay. Going to
Paul,
page-
you should have I think I sent the last version out. So if you go to my email and
Okay.
open that document, and if you can't, let me know and I'll send it to you again. That has the latest, I think,
Yeah, I
additions,
think
changes,
so.
revisions. Most of mine were just grammar and punctuation points and apostrophes and stuff.
Okay, on page 4, we start to, we're talking again about competency restoration.
I don't understand, I'm not quite sure I understand the edits here. First of all, relegating this category of patient to the most restrictive echelon of care questions the practice as being counterproductive and punitive. I think grammatically it's awkward and I don't understand what questions,
Well, we learned that there are occasions in which individuals with low-level nonviolent charges and little or no bond, and this was why I wanted it says on page 3, the recurrent theme of our discussion over the past 2 years was practice of admitting certain groups of individuals to a maximum security portion of Whiting Forensic Hospital, and whether there are alternative options. We learned, for instance, that there are occasions in which individuals with low-level nonviolent charges and little to no bond are sent to maximum security wards of the hospital for competency restoration. And I said relegating that category of 2 patients to the most restrictive echelon of care questions the practice as being counterproductive and punitive.
Okay, I don't think the grammatically that sentence works. So,
What don't you like about it?
I think it's grammatically correct.
well, I don't know, the questions refers back to what? What questions? By relegating this category?
But we just
The
said,
practice,
we
questions the
learned that
practice.
individuals that are going there for competency restoration are sometimes put in Whiting.
No, I understand that, but I'm just saying, I don't think it's artfully written and I think it's confusing the way it's written. So I think it needs to be edited.
Can I ask a question though? Because
You know, I don't say things about what you write, okay?
Wait.
Linda, this is not
I gave it
personal.
thought. I
I
gave
just
it
don't
thought.
understand it, for Christ's sake.
can I ask a question about what you're trying to say here? Because if you're saying that no competency patients should ever go to the maximum security, I don't agree with that.
That's not what she's saying.
Okay.
She's not saying
Yeah.
that, right? There are occasions, guys, it
It's a
says,
question of the
there are
practice.
occasions in which individuals with low-level, non-violent charges and little to no bond are sent to maximum security wards. That's the practice that's being
Right.
referred to in this next sentence. Relegating this category of patient, that's a very specific category of patient, to the most restrictive echelon of care, questions the practice as being counterproductive and punitive.
Okay.
I mean,
I think it would be clearer if we said relegating this category of patient to the most restrictive echeloning of care raises the question as to whether this practice is counterproductive and punitive.
that's
That
fair.
just makes it clearer in my mind, and I think clearer to the reader. So just make it raises the question.
Well, okay, I
That's fine.
am.
That's fine.
But
Raises
let me
the
say
question
that
whether
You could just
this
say
is-
it seems
Right,
to be
exactly.
counterproductive and punitive.
Exactly,
You could
right.
just say doing this seems counterproductive and punitive.
Right.
That's fine
That would
too.
just make it even clearer.
Yeah,
As
that's
long
fine
as we're,
too.
yeah, I just want to make sure we're talking about that particular category of patients, because there's certainly patients who need the maximum security.
Right.
Yeah, then that's fine. It seems counterproductive and punitive. Fewer words, the
is
better.
this
Yep.
where we're going to put in the legal definition of the competency restoration process? Well, we cited and then put the full text of the verbiage in the appendix.
Yes, I mean, we could either like, first mention of the word competency restoration, we could just put see appendix, whatever number we're up to for the statute.
Okay, then I think we need to do something with the next sentence because I'm not sure I understand. Frequently, these individuals remain hospitalized for several months only to have their cases resolved through some type of treatment-related disposition. I don't understand this clause rather than CVH-WFI. Once they are deemed competent by the court. I'm sorry, I don't understand that.
Me too. I didn't understand that thing that you inserted there under the
Yeah.
rather than CVH
either.
Whiting.
Would you say that again, Nancy?
Well, Lori and I don't understand your insertion of the parenthetical or of the clause rather than CVH-WFI.
Which isn't it WFH as well?
Well,
Yeah.
yeah, aside
Yeah.
from that, right.
And where is that on page 3 or 4?
Yep.
Four.
The very next
Or-
sentence, the very next
Very
sentence
next
that we were just at.
I don't have that in this copy. I'm sorry. I have, these individuals remain hospitalized for several months only to have their cases resolved through some type of treatment-related disposition once they are deemed competent by the court.
You probably don't have the most recent version up though, because the most recent version is the one that John sent around.
Well, I've been traveling since about 6 o'clock this morning, so I
He
Didn't
sent
get
it
it.
yes.
You added
it
this
yesterday.
clause, Linda. Do you know what you were referring to? You added that you inserted the rather than CVH Whiting. I didn't know what you
No, I
meant
did
there
not.
either.
Where is that?
Well, it's not in the draft that you're looking at, but the track changes indicated that you added that.
That's right.
Right, it's big red letters, right?
Yep.
Kind of in the middle there, rather than CVH, WFI.
Linda, go to John's draft. It came yesterday. And it's the most recent one.
Well, to do that, I'd have to tune you all out.
No, you
No,
don't.
no, you don't. Just
No, you don't.
minimize, just go to your
Email.
email and
Yeah.
open it. And then you could open both, you'll have both, minimize, if you have a full screen on this, minimize it, so you don't have all of us on the big.
If you're using a PC, that's all you have to do. If you're using a Mac, just spread it with your fingers.
Oh, yeah, I'm on a PC, so.
Okay, the reason I put that in was to kind of, I see it. Frequently, these individuals remain hospitalized for several months only. This was what someone else put in, only to have their cases resolved through some type of treatment-related disposition rather than CVH or the Whiting Forensic Hospital. Once they are deemed competent by the court. I put that in because it was confusing to me, and I just did it for clarification that they're not necessarily retained at the CVH or Whiting.
It still doesn't make sense. I don't understand it.
Well, take it out. Frequently, these individuals remain for several months only to have their cases resolved through some type of treatment-related disposition once they are deemed competent by the court. Do
Would
they
it be
go back to
helpful-
CVH or W?
Would it be helpful
Would it be
to
helpful to
say
say in the
outside
community?
of?
In the community, some sort of treatment related disposition in the community. That's
Yeah.
essentially what we're
All right.
saying.
Yeah,
Like,
I,
they come to the
Oh.
hospital for several months for competency, and their cases end up getting resolved through some sort of, usually there's some sort of mental health treatment
in the community.
in the community
Oh,
attached to their disposition, like through probation or
Right.
some jail diversion.
You know what?
They don't send them back to Whiting or CVH.
What
Right.
might help is to
Typically.
say to only have their criminal cases resolved. Because you don't know if you're talking about their treatment case or their criminal
No.
case, only to have their criminal cases resolved.
Yeah, I'll add that.
Okay,
Sorry, that was an assumption on my part. So yeah, criminal cases resolved through some sort of treatment-related disposition in the community.
okay,
They're deemed competent.
okay, cool.
Gotcha now.
Okay. So I was confused, and that's why I put it in there, that they're not going back to CVH, they're going somewhere else. That's what I was trying to say. Okay. Maybe Dr. Rodas, you should walk us through it the rest of the way, since you have the most current.
But I'm hoping you all have the same, if we're
No.
not all working on the same document, guys, we're gonna be here a long time, so
Right.
we can all take a break. Because I share the
Linda?
screen I have, but I don't think that works on this.
Linda, I just sent a copy down for you.
Okay. Oh, okay. Thank you, Beverly. Appreciate
Yeah.
it.
Kim and Lori,
Thank you.
Nancy, Paul, you all working on the
Yes.
latest version? Okay.
Yes.
All right,
What
so
is the
Linda's-
bold in that last paragraph on page 4?
I didn't use bold, so that's gotta be.
Somebody did, and it doesn't show up in track changes.
The
it's
last
just
paragraph,
bolded.
which one? Meet more regularly, formally, more public and open format? That one?
Yeah, that was in there.
I think we went through, when we got to like recommendations part, we bolded key things about the recommendations to draw the reader's attention to it. So in that first paragraph, we bolded the expand opportunities for jail diversion and augment the capacity for outpatient restoration. The second paragraph, the
Oh.
recommendation was essentially to revitalize that element of the CJ pack so that there are going to be these open discussions and whatnot.
I didn't
that's-
recognize that, Lori. I didn't realize the bold. I thought the bold was just somebody's way of putting in their inserts.
I
'Cause
agree.
I'm not a really big fan of bold throughout a document, to be honest with you, because
We
it
can
kind
take it all
of,
out.
then it takes away all the other things
Yep.
we said.
Right.
I
Right, I
think we could
agree.
just, when
So
we
are we
make a
just-
final
are we
edit,
just,
just undo the bolds.
Okay,
Yeah, I would undo the bolds.
I'll do that.
And do you want to put a 3F in that last paragraph where it says be revitalized, if that's what you were meaning?
Well, I thought in the first paragraph, the 1 and the 2 kind of go together, as
Okay,
they're both encouraging the system to use more outpatient, to use more, to divert people into other avenues other than long-term inpatient competency restoration. Okay, so I thought those were kind of corollary recommendations. The second paragraph is a sort of separate, completely different
okay. All right, so we'll just get
recommendation.
rid
You
of
know,
the
it's
bold.
more about getting the agencies to talk amongst each other and
I
share
see that
data.
most of this bold will be going out on the final draft. It's not,
Does that make sense, Nancy?
Yeah,
the
that's
words-
fine. And then
the
we'll
words
just get
won't
rid
go
of the
away,
bold.
just the bold will go away.
Bold.
Yeah,
Yeah,
the
the
bold will
bold's
go
gonna
away.
go away. All right,
And then that final paragraph is what Mike had added about training, cross-agency training, kind of a more specific
Right.
those discussions and stuff like that.
all right, moving on to 5. Was this you, Mike? Was this your part about the agent training and collaboration? Who was
Yes.
that?
Yes.
Well, we have it all underlined because it's new. Okay.
Yeah.
And we like
And
underline.
I think that's the language. We talked about it last time and I shared it with people and it seemed like
That's
people were okay with it.
yep.
Looks good.
Okay. Is there any more discussion on page 5? All right,
No,
6.
well, do we want the bold here?
The bold will
No.
be removed in all
As
of
we
it.
move forward, The recommendations definitely, but
Guys, let's get rid of
Just-
the bold. We
just-
don't need
just
to
a
make-
s-
Bold.
It's
yeah, this-
recommendations, they're bulleted.
Right.
Oh my God,
Right.
it's good. We
I
just got
think
bold
you're
in
right.
person. I mean, in person, I think should be hyphenated, by the way.
You know, we could underline recommendations, underline those, the findings, recommendations that
I
might
think that's
make,
worse.
that's worse.
I mean,
The headings can be.
the
bolded.
headings can be
That's fine.
bolded,
The
yeah,
headings-
yeah.
I think
but the text
bold-
should all be just regular.
I'm all for
No,
I'm all for the bold headings. That's
Yeah,
fine.
yeah, but I didn't know if we wanted underline and bold for the headings.
Yeah, it's
It really
all
makes
suspenders.
it's set apart, but we're really getting picky here.
What page are we on, guys?
6.
7.
Okay, so this is
Oh,
where, this is where we had the question about should, must, shall.
Mm-hmm.
And
Right.
Lori had asked, and Mike, you can weigh in on this too, obviously, as the other lawyer. Must, I've certainly really never seen in any kind of a legal document. Should is also not a term of art. Shall is really the term of art. Now, to be totally honest, it's hard to litigate a goal because that's what it is. It's a goal. It's not a mandate. But to use the word shall, should, I just think is very wishy-washy, and gives people the opportunity to say, well, it shouldn't be in this case, but it should be in this. I think that we want to give more mandatory language. And I think shall rather than should, which I first put, but I'm now into shall. I think that makes the language more mandatory. And again, it's just a goal. So the goal itself, a goal itself is not necessarily mandatory, but I'd like to give it a little more oomph.
So you would change it to when they are
Shall.
discharge ready, comma, the goal is that placement shall be made within 90 days?
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm
perfect.
fine with
Sounds
that. I'm
good.
fine with
Okay.
that. You got
Yeah.
that, Linda? Or who's doing the
Yeah,
edit?
yeah.
Or you're,
I'm taking all sorts of notes on this. Yeah.
all right, the goal is that placement shall be made within 90 days.
Perfect.
And
Perfect.
I
Good.
think it's worth keeping in mind that this might be a slightly different discussion if we were writing a statute,
Right.
Right.
right?
Right.
Which we're not. And
Right.
so the shall is here for emphasis. It's not really a mandate because we're
Right.
not, we don't have the authority to impose mandates on anybody. So.
Right. And a goal is never a mandate anyway.
Correct, yeah. Mhm.
Okay. Cool. That was easy.
Okay, page 8.
Well, so in this part here about the community services, in the email I sent earlier, I threw out a couple other thoughts that I was having about the community services, because reading through this again, I was feeling like, geez, I don't feel like we gave enough attention to things that the community should have to do or should be held accountable for in terms of reporting things and explaining things and stuff like that. So I was just curious what people thought about the bullets I sent over before.
Where specifically you're referring to, Lori? 'Cause I'm a little
Not in the
lost.
document. I emailed it to folks this morning.
Oh.
Oh,
Yeah,
Oh,
I
boy.
have it.
I'm gonna be like Linda, sorry, I have to sign this. Sorry, Linda, I couldn't help it. Oh, boy, see if I can navigate this now.
It was 8 something this morning. I sent over.
Well, here's what I'm concerned about. I agree with you're saying that these reasons in the 4th bullet should not be reasons why a community placement should refuse to take somebody. But I'm not sure. I mean, we can, I guess as a recommendation, it might be okay, but there's nothing in statute that says, and, let me know if I'm wrong, Paul, you might know, that says why a community facility can refuse or cannot use to refuse somebody. So, and Kim, maybe you know the answer. Can a community facility use whatever reason they want to refuse to take somebody? There aren't any regulatory or statutory provisions that say what they can use and what they can't use, are there?
Not that I know of, no.
Right. So,
I mean, my thoughts with this is kind of like what we were just talking about with the discharge ready language, you know, the goal shall be within 90 days. There's not a whole lot, I think, that can be enforced, but I think that there should be attention called to this kind of thing the same way as coming out of the hospital. Like, it takes both of us to make the discharges happen. And a lot of times we get people to the door where we feel they're ready to go and get this roadblock for a variety of reasons. And so I think that there should just be more, when people have to explain things and report to people and have people, you know, check up on them as well. I mean, then there might be a little bit more clarity around, you know, why people are being refused or.
Lori, is this an issue with the private nonprofits, or is this the state-run facilities as well?
You know, I mean, I'm not in social work, so I'm not always sure. I don't always know whether it's private, nonprofit, or state, or, you know, who's DMIS and what's not.
The only time, I'm sorry, the only time I know there's been issues if our clinical folks say, for whatever reason, and I know we always get into debates with this with hospital staff. So if they say the person wants to come back to their hometown and move to the house next door where the victim lives, you know, we say that could be obviously bad for the victim, and it could also not be good for the patient moving out. So those are the times that I see. And from my perspective, nothing's ever risen. I think they've always worked it out.
I've had a situation where I had a client who was living in a community residence, and they tried to kick her out because she went off her medications, which you can't do because you can't be forced to take medication in the community.
We don't do that.
Right. Well, this was a DMIS facility.
And I get that, you know, if somebody stops taking their medication and they become symptomatic and they become problematic and they become aggressive, then, you know, of course they have every right to say, you can't be at this facility anymore. You can't live at this respite. You can't be in this group home if you're going to be, you know, causing trouble for me. I get that. But to sort of preemptively say, no, we're not going to take this person because we know they're going to go off their meds. And when they do, they become problematic. We've known them in the past. I mean, it just,
I agree with you.
Some
Giving people a
recent
chance.
experience, they don't have to tell you why they're not taking them. They just say they decline the admission. They don't have to tell you.
but they ask those questions. You know, they ask the questions, are they taking their meds? Are they going to take their meds?
I know they do, but they don't tell you why. They just.
I mean, I
Just
like
an
the
example of
idea,
that.
Lori, of requiring the facility to have to articulate a reason. And then if these reasons are, if there's a review and audit of this, you'll see. Now, that's assuming that, you know, the facility is going to be telling, you know, accurately why they turned somebody down. But as part of a review, that would be very important information. So, so yeah, I like it.
And the other piece of this, like that website that just got started, Paul, that you referred us to, you know, I was extremely excited about that. And it's a great idea in theory, but you know, unless it's kept accurately, it's not helpful. I mean, there's been a lot of times where, you know, maybe the number as reported on the website is one thing, but then the agency itself is either telling us like, no, they don't have beds when the website says they do, or the opposite. Yes, they do have beds when the website says they don't. So
Right.
unless things are uploaded and reported and kept up accurately, it's not going to be as helpful as it could be. So I think some more attention needs to be put on those kinds of things. So there's more transparency on the
Right. Well,
outside.
and the thing too is, like I know with the detox beds, those are updated in the morning, each and every morning. But I don't know if they update it once one of the beds is taken. With the other housing stuff though, so like Kim, would community foundations, do you know how often they report? Do they report daily, or do they report monthly or weekly, or?
I do not think, now, twice a day we do report detox. So I just want you to know that.
Yeah.
Community foundation, again, historically has been a longer term, and it's people's
Right.
homes. So we don't, the debate is why would you ask them to be discharged from their homes, but then there's no room, there's no movement there. I think they're updated, but I'm not sure how often. I think it
Right.
might be monthly. I think it's monthly for that. I'm going to find out though.
Right. Well, and the other part of that too, Lori, is it doesn't say if the agency has a waiting list on top of it, and how long that waiting list is.
Right. And
So that might be something that would be useful for people when they're considering discharge.
So in these two facilities, do they have discharge planners?
In which two facilities?
Like at CVH and at Whiting, are there discharge
yeah.
planners?
Oh yeah.
They would probably know
That's
who,
social work.
they would probably know who takes what kinds of patients.
Of course. But it's a matter of this website that Paul referred to. It's a great resource to find out where the beds are. If it was, updated regularly and
frequently.
accurate, and we knew where there were wait lists and things like that.
So, and
I just think there could be more, transparency and accountability on that end.
so another question I have on this, Lori, because I just thought of someone at another hospital who they were having a hard time discharging them because of the complexity of the case, both physical and psychiatric. Would that ever be an instance where the case could be too complex for any given agency?
Sure. I mean, and there, a lot of people that are, that they require, like a special build, as they call it, specific types of treatments, and a lot of monitoring and a lot of hands-on. I mean, like, those are the kinds of cases that end up at the hospital that don't belong there,
Right.
because there's not sufficient, places in the community, or
there's nowhere else for them to go.
there's nowhere for them
Right.
to go, and they're very, they require a lot of staff, a lot of treatment, a lot of devotion, attention to one person. But the hospital is not a suitable place either. So it's,
And
yeah,
and so it sounds like it would be prudent and cost effective for DEMAS to develop streams for when someone is that complex, as opposed to just saying, let's put it on a provider. How do we have those extra
have, though.
resources available?
They have done that.
Yeah.
yeah.
How has it worked? Has it been any good, or?
Sure, there's specific people who need discharge, and it's exactly that. They need a higher level of supervision than our community foundations, which is a supervised apartment. And so we've been funded in the past, and I believe other agencies, I know they have been funded for a specific program. We just got funded for a specific program for 2 people to come out of the hospital. And now they live in an apartment together, but we have to have a lot of staff there.
Yeah.
But they did fund us to do that. I don't know how often it happens. I think that's probably the bigger point, right? I don't know how often that happens, but I just want you to know they have done that in the
Yeah.
past.
Okay.
So are there any more suggestions on additions to page 7? Changes? Okay. Page 8. This was on the allowing the patient to be present during the searching of his personal position. But I think that's already been kind of remedied by the law.
Oh, yeah.
So go on to examining the role of the PSRB. One,
Linda, under section 3C,
and where would that be?
at the end of that page, page 9.
I'm on 8. What is page 3C?
Page 9.
Yeah, end of page 9, we're on the recommendations under section 3C.
Right.
Currently, equities periods of commitment can be extended indefinitely. You added without a judicial review of the case.
Right. That was my question.
No, that
No.
they can be.
Well, I'm thinking that the PSRB doesn't have to go to the court. They can just, is it
No.
not?
No,
they
this section specifically deals with patients' recommitment by the superior court. So when people get a period of commitment, when they're committed to the board, they're committed for a period of time, 20 years, 40 years, 60 years, whatever.
Right.
Once that period of commitment ends, presently in the statute, they can be recommitted for
To
3
the
years,
board.
5 years to the board.
Right.
Yes,
Right.
that is done
It's
through.
Okay,
That is
what
done.
what was your reason? What was your aim as saying they have to, when a commitment has expired, the first sentence says currently equities periods of commitment can be extended indefinitely.
Mhm.
What is
Yep.
the difference between their commitment has expired and being extended indefinitely?
What I'm saying is the phrase that you added there, without a judicial review of the case, is inaccurate. They can be extended, but there is definitely a judicial review. That case has to be heard in the superior court, and the superior court has to decide that they're going to extend their commitment. So the without
but
judicial
I-
review is inaccurate.
I'm not really clear. What is the PSRB can extend the commitment, right?
No, the superior court can extend the commitment to the PSRB. The superior court, the court of original jurisdiction, the one that puts them under the board in the first place.
It's like
Right.
a sentence. It's like a sentence that the court imposes and the PSRB administers it.
Right.
But it's not,
But it's
it
not
doesn't
their
happen,
decision
it
to
doesn't
send it
happen
to the
without
court.
judicial review.
Right.
It
Right.
is
Okay.
specifically a court review. The state presents their case, the defense is there to present their case about why their client shouldn't be recommitted, and then the superior court judge makes that decision. So there
Okay.
is a review.
Right. And so the thing with that though, is we're saying that shouldn't happen.
Correct,
That
we
once
all
the
agree
person,
on that.
right, once the person's sentence is up, it should
Right.
move to civil, it should move to a
Correct.
civil matter or discharge.
Correct.
Right.
Exactly.
Exactly.
So we should just take out those words without judicial
Yes.
review and it's still,
Right.
it all works.
Correct.
Yes.
Okay, is section 4 okay?
So, well, the part of that is the state should have to apply for civil commitment pursuant to part 2 of chapter 319I if they believe the patient continues to be a danger to self or others.
Right.
So that right now that's crossed out
No, it's not.
No, it's not.
on 10. Okay, so I don't even have the most recent version.
Okay.
No, I think you do, Paul. It's in there twice. So like in the paragraph,
okay.
you see it now?
Yeah.
The original verbiage was crossed completely out and then someone augmented with some different language. But it says the same thing, that
Yeah. Okay.
we should have to apply for civil commitment.
Right.
Right. Okay.
So now we're on 10, right?
All right, yep, going to 10. Are there any changes, or we already have the disagreement, so are there any changes? Okay. Page 11.
There's no changes on page 11, except the bolding, which will go.
All right. Page 12. Anything? No? Page 13. I had the question in there about where it said that all state-operated inpatient hospitals be required to report data quarterly to the OIG regarding the racial, ethnic, and language breakdown of individuals submitted to involuntary psychiatric treatment, including civil commitment, involuntary medication, involuntary electroshock, convulsive shock therapy, restraint, and seclusion. Did you mean all state agencies or only those under the purview of DEMA?
Well, wouldn't the only one that's not Demas be Yukon?
Well, it'd also be Rocky Hill.
Yeah. I don't think you want to say, you want to just make it.
I think we want to say DEMA.
You kind of be doing this, right?
What was that, John?
I mean, I don't think you want UConn to be, it's not every hospital. State operated hospitals under, I guess, under DEMAS,
Right.
that's more specific.
State psychiatric hospitals?
That's even better.
Yeah.
Wouldn't we want everybody to report that data? I mean,
Yeah, there are
Why
other
not?
psychiatric hospitals in the state.
What was that? I'm sorry, I didn't hear that.
I just said, well,
No,
state
no, no.
operated inpatient psychiatric hospitals. Just add the word psychiatric, right? Wouldn't we
Oh.
want the data from all state psychiatric hospitals?
So that wouldn't include a psych unit at a general hospital.
No, it wouldn't include IOL. It wouldn't include,
Well, IOL's not a state operated hospital.
right.
I think that's why I think the only thing, I mean, I thought Rocky Hill was federal, but
No, it's not.
oh, well, because Yukon was the only one that I was thinking of.
I'd be careful here going too broad. It's not our
Yeah, I would just say
Thank you.
DEMAS.
making recommendations that are outside the whiting. I'd be careful.
What are you recommending, John? That just leave it the way it is, or add the word DEMAS?
Yeah, or DEMAS or what you said, psychiatric.
State
hospital.
psychiatric. Okay.
I think we add psychiatric.
Do we
Psychiatric.
want to say psychiatric hospitals or psychiatric inpatient psychiatric facilities? Because are they all hospitals?
No, and you also have, you have the VA.
Well, we're not talking about that right now. I'm just saying, are the state facilities like Bridgeport and New Haven, are they considered hospitals or are they considered facilities? Because it's going to be different. So that's why I'm wondering if we want to, or say hospitals and facilities.
I think if you're saying inpatient, that implies hospital. So like the
Right.
Greater Bridgeport,
Capital region.
CMHC, Capital Region,
They're
those would all
hospitals?
be hospitals.
Ugh. Are we sure? I mean,
I
under
think that,
like
you know, I
public
kind of
health.
agree with Dr. Rodas that maybe we should just limit it to our purview on this, to the
Well,
DEMAS.
I suppose if we say state operated psychiatric inpatient,
Facility,
Facility, we're good.
facility.
legis-
Yeah.
legislature will figure it out.
That's narrowest
Yeah.
and cleanest, I think, yeah.
So
Yep.
you wanted to say, all state-operated inpatient psychiatric,
Facilities.
okay?
But I thought we wanted to say Demas.
That's redundant. There's no state operated that isn't Demas.
Not Yukon?
Oh,
I keep saying
Yeah.
that. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Yukon has a
that's-
psych unit. And that's a state-operated hospital, but it's not Demas.
Psychiatric hospital though, right? We're saying psychiatric hospital. That you can have
inpatient psychiatric,
Inpatient.
state run, a state operated psychiatric, inpatient psychiatric facility.
Right.
Right, psychiatric facilities.
Yeah.
Okay, and.
Can I just add, you can add probably the Department of Correction and
Ooh.
the
Yeah.
juvenile facilities probably have provisions for that as well. I mean, I don't know how technically it'd be defined, but they definitely have inpatient care of psychiatric patients in DOC.
But they're certainly not considered a hospital. That's why that word. then-
Yeah, I'm just saying.
Right.
Yeah,
It would be hospitalized in a state-run facility
sort of.
receiving care. And there's quite a few,
Yeah.
just saying.
This might be something for the legislatures to work out.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm just throwing it out there.
Legislator,
I don't think it
I
creates a
think-
Yeah,
problem.
Nobody wants to go in
pointing
those
that out.
areas. Nobody
If
wants to go
anything,
there.
the majority of people in state custody who have mental illness are in DOC, not in Demas.
Right.
Right,
Right.
and I think we were asked to. Well, we were. The Whiting Forensic Hospital membership of the advisory board. We were talking about recommendations. And I think it would be safer, if you want this to pass, you don't want to make it broad. Because
Yeah.
some will take it and pull that thread. And then everything will bog down.
So,
I
but
think-
but isn't there the possibility too that it'll get shot down because it's too narrowly focused on CVH and Whiting, and why are we picking on them?
That's
Because
the
they were the
role of
ones
task
that
force.
Right.
our task force is supposed to look at.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And in actuality, I think that all state-operated inpatient psychiatric facilities be required to report data quarterly to the OIG. Right there it is. We're just talking about Demas. Our proposal was the OIG. So it is Demas.
What?
And we said all the facilities, so that's broad too, that the OIG would have purview over all Demas and Demas funded. So does that make sense? That we say that we recommend that all state operated inpatient psychiatric facilities, Demas run? Yeah,
Yes.
okay, you got it? Everybody agrees with that?
Mhm.
Any disagreement? Okay. Also on this particular area, I also asked about the recommendations of the definition of neglect, and we had said that it would be inappropriate or unwanted individual or individual sexual conduct. And I wanted to know, is harassment, taunting, bullying also a concern, and complaints of discrimination?
I'm not sure why that's why sexual conduct and harassment, taunting, is neglect as opposed to abuse.
no,
Neglect-
it's not. That's not what it says. It's the provider's failure by a caregiver through action or inaction to provide
okay.
an image with blah, 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 including
Okay.
safety. And then it goes on to say that includes
Okay,
essentially like not preventing somebody from unwanted sexual contact while they're in your facility. That's, that'd be considered.
okay, that's fine.
So the other issues of taunting and bullying and this harassment, include them?
I
Because-
think the definition of that it was there was pretty, it was simple but clear.
But the other part is failure by a caregiver through action or inaction to provide an individual with the services necessary to maintain his or her physical and mental health and safety, including incidents of inappropriate or unwanted individual sexual conduct. Again, you're looking at the ceiling, and there are many more steps in between that can also be inappropriate. And we heard that and we saw it. So why, and we saw that in some cases, nothing was done to address it. So again, by being a little more directive in what goes into that, it
Well, you
also,
have to be careful to not list so many things that you look like you're making an inclusive list, so you can then make the argument that something that excluded was intended to be excluded. So if you're going to start adding all of these things, you'd have to say including but not limited to. But
All
it
right,
can get very
agree.
dangerous.
but we heard and we got letters that also told us about these other incidents. And so it included but not limited to.
Yeah, I can move it.
Because again, it's so broad, somebody can say, well, it wasn't sexual. We've heard that enough, but it was demeaning. And
Yeah.
so,
If this is, this is talking about caregivers need to provide an individual with essentially a safe environment, including being able to protect them from individual, like the example they give here, individual to individual sexual contact. But does that mean, like, are we holding people to a standard of you're being neglectful if you don't prevent an individual in your care from being harassed or being taunted, like by a peer?
this is, it is failure by a caregiver through action or inaction to provide an individual with the services necessary to maintain his or her physical and mental health and safety. It's not including incidents of inappropriate or unwanted individual sexual conduct, harassment, taunting, bullying. You need to help them because that's part of what's keeping them down. Discrimination, some of the things that people were said to them. So if you don't do anything about that, are you neglectful?
I guess
Well,
I'm trying to understand whether it means preventing that from happening, like staff doing that behavior versus
It's
peers.
not preventing it, it's doing something when it happens.
I'm not sure what you could do about discrimination. Because what does that mean? That's a really broad, I mean,
It is defined by the individual more often than
but
not.
then it's not actionable if it's defined by the individual. So, bullying, and taunting and harassment is a little bit less, it's a little more easily defined than discrimination. What's discrimination to one person can be, I don't know what the right
Well,
term
we
is.
found in the survey that we did that there were people of color were more often feeling that they had been harassed and that they had been
That was staff.
That was
staff.
No.
staff.
Yeah, we can't make staff accountable for
No.
other staff.
don't go there. Okay. You know what was going on. You heard it, you saw it. You saw it during the meeting that we were there. If you weren't paying attention to how it was done, I'm sorry you missed it. And I don't understand why there is any obstinance to putting those in.
I'm not sure, we can't, and our charge is to tell that staff has to be
So you're going to
responsible.
say that the only thing they're supposed to take care of is unwanted sexual contact. That's it.
Of patients, not other staff. It's
I'm
neglect.
talking about that. So
Right.
if someone is harassed, if their things are taken, if they're put.
I
I'm surprised.
hear what you're saying, Linda, and I agree with you, because if I'm a patient there and there's another patient that every morning they wake up and they hit me in the face, the staff should be preventing that.
Right. But that has conduct to do with patient care.
Right, and that's what she's talking about.
But
But
they've gone, and it has happened, and no one has reported it, and it continues to happen.
The discrimination you were talking about, that's what staff reported.
Right.
So that's where I guess I
did
was,
the patients.
Yeah.
So did the patient.
I think, I don't remember the details, but I think Linda's right. I think we can't neglect that part. And why would we not? Why would we want to? Why would we not state
Yeah.
that? What's, you know?
So
Because
it
I'm
says,
thinking about the legal definition of neglect and how that can impact on somebody. So are you saying that if a staff person sees another staff person being discriminated against, whatever that means, and if they fail to report that they are then guilty of some kind of workplace violation?
if you read the sentence after this, consequently, mandated reporters should be required to report suspected neglect as well as suspected abuse.
But
what we're
mandated
saying.
reporters are people who have a relationship,
professional duty.
a professional duty or to another person. And they have some kind of authority over that other person. So for example, parents are mandated reporters, teachers are mandated reporters of students, but not peer-to-peer. There's no.
Wait a minute.
Peer-to-peer.
No.
Demas has made everybody, has put them in that category of mandated reporters.
Yeah, for our patients.
Right.
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 Not
And
not
that's
our,
what
not
she,
each
and that's what
Not
she's
a
talking
staff.
about.
I'm talking about patients.
She's talking about patients.
I thought
But
she
so-
was.
I'm
I
not-
guess, so I'm trying to think about it in terms of, from a mandated reporter perspective. When, like, where would the line be, right? So if two patients are engaged in a basketball game and they're, taunting each other, and then one patient comes to you and says, I'm being taunted or I'm being harassed. I mean, we can
What would
the other
Mr.
person,
Shahani, how would you label what happened to him?
no, I'm not talking about that because that's
And
clear.
how many other
Wait,
people
let
in there?
Lori finish.
Linda, I'm not talking about that because that's clear. I'm talking about farther down the scale. Where you draw that line? I guess I'm trying to figure out, being a mandated reporter, where we're putting the line as to what we would need to report in terms of neglect, right? This is where it
This
gets
is my understanding of what Linda is saying. This is purely a staff to patient neglect. That it's not patient to patient. It's right. They should be responsible for controlling that environment, right? Because the staff have that responsibility of controlling the environment
to the extent that we can.
Right.
Okay. I mean, we cannot keep and believe me, this has been an issue that people have struggled with over the years in terms of how much we can prevent and how we can prevent one patient from either insulting, harassing, demeaning, taunting, even hitting another patient if with the tools that we have. So this is why I'm being very explicit and very clear about, we need to know as mandated reporters where we're putting this line.
You
And-
should read the letter that the commissioner, if the commissioner had to send a letter telling you have to report neglect, and made it quite clear in that letter that everyone as a mandated reporter, we should not be even discussing this. That's what it is now. That's
We're
what's
talking
happening
about-
now.
We're talking
But I-
about staff to patient, right, Linda?
Right.
Yes.
All right. And then what do you mean by discrimination? Because discrimination is a very broad term and there's no definition
There is.
there. And as a lawyer, I have to have a definition of what's discrimination. It doesn't mean anything to me just to say discrimination.
The next sentence says mandated reporters should be required to report suspected neglect as well as suspected abuse. We are not the deciders of what it is. They should be reporting these things.
Yeah, but you're asking if discrimination is something that should be reported. And I need to, how do you know? You have to know what it is to be able to report it.
Well, do you think that they're gonna you think they're going to be looking for a definition if someone says I was discriminated against?
But what does it mean? It's so vague. If it has no definition, no one's going to be able to do anything about it.
It is not vague. If you were the
Very
person
vague.
being
As a
Can I-
lawyer, I'm
Let's put
telling
in a
you.
definition. Let's put in a definition.
Well, it's a,
Can I ask a question?
yes.
Sorry. I think if I understand the dialogue, I think the point I'm trying to make, is that everybody knew there were things going on and nobody did anything about it.
Right.
Is that not the background of why we're having this discussion, right? So, just to be clear, I am only talking about staff abusing, neglecting, discriminating against patients. So I'm Mike, and I work there as a nurse, a guard, nursing assistant, and Joe, and I'm white, and Joe is white, and he's another coworker with me. And I see Joe consistently neglecting, calling Sam, who's African-American, calling him names, using the N-word, not treating him nicely, isolating him in his room, or whatever it is. I think what we're saying is I have an obligation to report that.
Mhm.
Isn't that what we're saying?
Yes.
How we word it, we're not writing a legal document here, right? We're writing a task force recommendation. I think we want people to stand up, raise their hand and say, hey, you know what? I saw that person doing some really not right things. Don't wait till they're kicking them when they're down, right? We want to
Right.
get it when they're clearly neglecting, abusing, taunting, all of those things, right? So I don't know how you guys want to write that, but do we agree that's what we're trying to talk about here?
Yes.
That's what we're talking about?
Yes,
Mhm.
and I thought it was clear the way it was written. That's that's my point. And I
And
thought,
you think it's just limited to sexual contact?
I don't think it's limited to that. I'm saying, I think it's clearer the way it's written so that when it's not, we don't have to identify every single possible thing that could be an example of a behavior of abuse or
Right.
neglect. I think it's
Right.
the very general statement that was there in the first place without muddying it with all these distinctions that people are
Right.
going to disagree with or disagree about. I
Right.
think it's clearer to keep it simple.
I
That's
agree.
all.
Sometimes,
I
Lori,
agree.
sometimes we use the words not limited to,
We
you know,
already
to
said
say
that, yeah.
such as or not limited to, right?
Yeah,
And
that's
then
what I
that kinda-
said. Yeah.
That covers a whole broad panoply of things.
But I would just say that the crux of the problem that we are here for is because people didn't talk about it, didn't report it, and it went on for years.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's not because we need a legal definition of discrimination. If you've ever been discriminated against, you know what it is.
Yeah.
And there has to be a way.
And
There has to be a way.
the attitude in any place can be quick. Oh, he's just joking. He's just joking with him, right?
Right.
And next thing you know, it escalates because no one stood up.
That's exactly right.
Right.
That is
Guys.
that is the tale of Mr. Shahadi.
Just a heads up, I have a hard stop at 3, just so you know.
Yeah, I thought we were scheduled.
I would,
for
I
8:30.
think included but not limited to individual sexual contact, harassment, taunting, bullying, and discrimination, complaints of discrimination. If you were in the union and you thought somebody was discriminating against you, you could go to the union. And they don't say, well, there's not a legal definition of that, so don't talk to me about it. We have a chance here to be a little bit more actually empowering the people by requiring, which I thought the commissioner's letter, making people mandated reporters. We'll put included but not limited to, but I'm not taking out discrimination because that's the beginning. It's just the beginning. And when that works, then you just go up your the ladder of humiliations. All right. We are on page 14. I thought it was important to write out the Department of Public Health so people know who that is. And I thought we should just be very plain that we believe that all DEMA's facilities should be required to be licensed by the state. And I don't see, the only other thing I did on this page was I started putting the actual percentages from the reports because first of all, some people don't read fifth and a quarter, but they do look at the numbers. And that's what I did over on 15.
Nancy, real quickly with that, where you put 25%, you need to take out the A ahead of it.
Oh, okay.
I mean, the 20%.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
And the one before that, there's almost 90% of respondents. There shouldn't be a comma after 90%. It's almost 90% of respondents, comma, which equates to almost 24% total workforce, comma, reported. That first comma doesn't belong.
Okay. Maybe you should go over this before we send it in because of your expertise in the punctuation.
Nor does the capital on the R.
Right.
All right.
I mean, when we're got another clean copy, I'll be very careful going through
Okay.
any of those things.
On '16. And 17. We have a few minutes before Dr. Rodas has to leave. Do you want to take the time to vote on the recommendations as they are stated?
I think we need to have a final draft before we can vote. It's still, you can't vote on a draft.
Can I just ask a question? Is it safe to assume, based on the discussion this afternoon, that subject to sort of minor editing to clear up grammatical mistakes, that we're basically all okay with the content that we've seen, right? So there's no controversy remaining that we're aware of, right?
No.
Okay. Well, then
Does anyone have an issue with me putting those couple bullets that I circulated today, like into 2 sentences in the community services part? in the next,
Those 1, 2,
Oh,
the 4
I-
bullets. We discussed those, yeah.
just about
Okay.
like having them report things and being accountable.
Yeah. I read it finally. I was fine with it.
Yeah.
Then yeah, I'm good with it.
Okay, so are you saying you don't want to vote on the recommendations because this is not a clean copy of the verbiage?
Yeah.
Or were there any, say again?
We just did, but Mike asked the question and we all were okay, so.
Yeah,
it's gonna be a
I
formal
think,
vote.
It'll be
think,
a formal vote.
yeah, a formal vote should come. And I think once we have the final thing in front of us, but I think the important thing for us to be aware, I think we've basically finished our work and we're just going to do some tying up loose ends and then take a formal vote and
Right.
then we're good. And we are going to attach the survey to it, right?
Right.
Yeah.
And we're also going to, we are able to attach or appendicize the, some of the documents that we were
Yeah.
given to review. And we are
Okay.
going to say, you know, the number of meetings we held and things like
Mhm.
that, so.
And we can't do a formal vote until there's a summary written. Because
Yeah.
there's a blank for that summary.
Can we, so for the next, when we pass around the next version, would you guys mind, whoever, I guess, I don't know if it's Linda or Beverly maybe, could you actually also include all the appendices? Or at least reference them so, and somewhere, so I want to make sure the numbers are all jive with what we have. Appendix 1, 2, 3, or A, B, C. I don't care if you do, I don't care if you do appendix A or appendix 1, but so I make sure they all jive to where they belong. And
So that's really a final that we
Yeah.
can see.
yeah,
All it has to be done is PDF.
right.
Well, and don't forget, this report will live, I'm guessing, on the website of the Public Health Committee, right, Beverly? I mean, that's really where it will be and where people will go to see it. And a lot of the stuff is already there. So just maybe be organized more clearly to correspond with our report. But the good, like the idea of back in the good old days where you're generating, 100 copies of a big, that's not going to happen. So, or maybe it will, I don't know, but it's not our decision. But okay.
Okay, I think we need to like, when will we be getting together again?
Sure.
Is somebody gonna try to tackle a summary?
I am. I think what I intend to do is, there are several threads that with accountability, oversight, things like that, and that what we saw and why it was important that the recommendations, for example, for the Office of the Inspector General and more of this, and the licensure by the state. These are big things, but they are important in order to move this forward and to protect patients.
I agree.
And
I would try to keep it short and sweet, not restate what we have throughout the document. That's all. So it's tricky sometimes to write that, but I'm sure you'll handle it. I have to connect to another meeting, guys. I hate to do this here, but
Well,
thank
can
you
we
so
just
much.
pick
everyone.
let's pick a date before you go.
We need 2 weeks, or can we?
What's 2 weeks from today?
15th.
I'm good. I'm good with that.
I'm good.
Bye.
Anybody
Doc.
not good?
All right, if anybody, I don't have my calendar here, but I think it's okay for me.
2 weeks from today, you're saying?
Yeah, 2 weeks from today is,
15.
Okay.
Just so you know, I might not be able to join until we go 1:30. Go ahead.
I'm going to be in Italy on 2 weeks from today, unfortunately.
Oh, okay.
So
And
you're
I'm
going
gonna
to
have,
Italy? Oh, how terrible.
I don't know. I have to work there all next spring. I'm teaching there.
Have to?
It's duty calls, what are you gonna do? We have a campus in Prato, Italy, so I was supposed to teach there a year ago, but I got
So
kicked
you're
over
saying that you
to-
can't come on the 15th?
Correct.
And
All right.
that's a tough day for me.
Do you
All
want to
right,
do the
what about what's the
22nd?
next one, 22nd?
Yeah, that works for me.
22nd doesn't work.
All right, 22nd.
Okay.
No, Lori said
20
she
I
can't.
said 22nd doesn't work for me.
You're what?
Doesn't-
It does not work for me. I have I'm giving an oral exam that day from like
Oh,
10,
oh, oh.
10 to 1, I think. Well, actually, I think the exam's 10 to 1, so maybe I could do it at 2.
Yeah.
Want to start 2 to
Do we have
3:30?
to-
And don't forget,
Are you limited now to just Fridays, Mike?
I'm not, no, Mondays and Wednesdays are my bad days, but I'm pretty sure this meeting that we're talking about is going to be relatively short.
Brief. Yeah.
Okay, so
So
could we,
Yeah, okay, 2 o'clock
2:00,
22nd?
on the 22nd.
and someone will tell Dr. Rodas, right? Because he bailed out when he thought
Okay.
it was the 15th.
Let's hope he can do it.
If not, are folks available the following week, just so we have a backup?
Yep.
Yeah.
I am.
I am too.
So Friday, October 22nd.
Oh, I'm not
2
on the
o'clock.
29th.
Okay. Well, let's shoot for the 22nd. and
So
if there's
please.
a problem, we'll
The
figure it out.
22nd. Okay, is there anything else that we need to come before the group?
Not for me.
Hearing none.
Thank you all.
Have a
Yeah.
good one.